What's up, Sean Nalwani? I'm your guide Q, and today we're looking at some neckbeard stories. Let's get into the gross. Alright, this story just made me laugh. Bill is sliding down the slope into neckbeard territory. I've known my partner's twin brother, my brother-in-law, Bill, for 10 years now. When we first met, he was in university studying, and was a bit awkward around girls he thought were attractive, nothing too weird for a guy that age. I was not considered a girl to be awkward around because I was family, so we got along. He started an apprenticeship in his mid-20s while still living with his parents. The time before that, but after school, is another crazy story that has nothing to do with this one, where he met the love of his life. Let's call her Stephanie. Stephanie was a few years older, nothing weird, but she was looking for a serious relationship and wanted to settle down. Well, Bill apparently didn't manage to tell her he was interested in her, or show it in some other way. My favorite part of this story is how it ended. Stephanie went with him to a pizza place to talk, and she asked him point blank what he wanted, her meaning their relationship, and him going, "A pizza with salami." Well, she was not impressed with that answer. Stephanie got fed up, found another guy, and got pregnant really fast. In retrospect, that is when he started going down the slippery slope to become a neckbeard. He doesn't talk to real girls anymore, we are all beneath him, and he constantly makes sexist jokes. I am always amazed that his mother just laughs those off. When I say something or don't look amused, I am already the evil woman. He games all day and only alternates this with watching the typical animes. He nearly never leaves the house and put on a few pounds. But it still took to him actually growing a neckbeard for me to finally realize. Over the last few years, I was watching a neckbeard slowly be born, and all because he wanted a pizza with salami more than telling Stephanie how he felt. Okay, so I don't think that the story is good. It's not like a super interesting neckbeard story, but I just love this fucking pizza with salami thing. Like, what if our boy Bill was legitimately thinking she just asked what kind of food he wanted, and he's like, yo, I've just been craving a pizza with salami for so long. This girl freaks out. He has no idea what the issue is, and then he's like, nah, I guess it's time to hate women because they just freak out at you and leave you when you tell them what kind of pizza you want. Like, I would bet money that, you know, it was more obvious that she was asking about the relationship, but who knows at the end of the day? We do not have enough context, and I love the pizza with salami thing. Alright, we've got somebody's neckbeard friend. My neckbeard friend. We shall call him K. I've been friends with K since elementary school. K is short, about 5.5 in feet. I am European, so I usually use the metric system, not sure how that's relevant, and very obese. So obese, in fact, that it has already started to cause him health problems, and he is not even 30 yet. No matter how much everyone tries to get him to lose weight, he refuses to do so. I keep inviting him to come to the gym with me so he can lose weight, but he always comes up with some excuse. The latest and longest running excuse is COVID, despite the fact that he is fully vaccinated. He has a literal neckbeard that he never shaves or grooms. He wanted to get a fedora for a time, but I did not let him. Instead, he wears a literal World War II flying helmet with anime t-shirts and shorts. Picture Gimli from Lord of the Rings, but obese with a World War II flying helmet on. That is pretty much K. K has a very unusual sense of humor, or lack of one. His humor pretty much boils down to talking loudly in public about hentai, pen, star, I don't even know what that is, and overtly hitting on everyone in the group, men included. He sometimes answers his phone by literally moaning into it. All of this is supposed to provoke a shock reaction, I guess, but he does it over and over again so often that it just gets very annoying very quickly. He was told to F off by the group several times because it got so annoying, but he still does it anyway. Now, the men in the group know that K is not actually bisexual, but for women and newcomers, this can get very uncomfortable, because they think he's actually hitting on them in front of everyone. Unlike most neckbeards, K has a girlfriend, and he constantly describes their intimate life and asks her for intimate acts in public. As far as I know, they never went through with it, but it makes her visibly uncomfortable, to the point that I feel sorry for her. When he's not making perverted comments in public, Kay loves to talk about politics and economy, which actually just boils down to him criticizing everyone's views and beliefs and claiming how much smarter he is than everyone else, including global leaders. Even if you do not want to talk about that, K will hound you and provoke until he gets a reaction. His political views are a strange mix of left and right wing. K supports equal rights for LGBTQ people, but at the same time is openly racist towards Chinese and Russians because they are all communist scum who want to take over the world. K once unironically made the claim that Japanese atrocities against the Chinese during WW2 are justified because China is now an evil communist empire. And you are not allowed to disagree with K. If you do, he will stop hounding you for days until you finally give in just to make him leave you alone. Let me know if anybody else had this feeling, please be honest. I actually started to feel bad for K at the beginning because the initial criticisms were like, oh, he's short, he's very fat, and he refuses to come to the gym with me, which is like a very common thing for very obese people, you know? It's not as simple as like, oh, just come to the gym, it's fucking easy. Like, usually it's like the fear of being looked at as a fat person, not knowing what you're doing at all. Like, I do not fault you at all for trying to get him to come with you, but often it's like an addict situation where like you can't help them until they're willing to receive help, yada yada. And then you describe that you refused to let him get a fedora, which is kind of weird, and instead he looks like Gimli from Lord of the Rings but with a World War II flying helmet on, which I was like, yeah, that's pretty fucking cool, this guy sounds awesome. But then all the descriptions of his actual character sounded terrible. He's like actually hitting on people even though he says it's ironic. It doesn't really matter if you're making people uncomfortable with constant advances, whether a joke or not, it's like still harassment and cringe. And yeah, it's definitely time to have a difficult conversation with K and get him out the friend group. Alright, so this Neckbeard is simultaneously gross and also my hero at the same time. Neckbeard was cocky about eating people's leftovers. In 2002, I was in the cinema with my friend watching Star Wars Episode 2. As the credits rolled, my friend and I stayed in our seats because we had nowhere else to go and were in no rush to head home. Towards the end, we stood up to leave when this guy with a thick neck beard wearing a long leather coat and holding a half-empty box of popcorn came up to us and said, "I stayed till the end, too. I paid for my ticket, and the movie isn't over till the last frame. Look at all the snacks these idiots left behind." He proceeded to walk through the aisles eating and drinking people's leftovers. What really cemented the what the fuck moment for us was that the Neckbeard sounded so smug and superior when he proudly said he scavenges people's rejected food. Now, is this objectively disgusting? Yes. Is it also extremely high IQ and based? Absolutely, dude. This guy is cool as hell. You know, all these people, they go to a premiere of a movie, there's probably hundreds of people in there. You know, they get a little full in the middle of the movie and stop eating and they leave this stuff behind. The staff's gonna have to clean that up. No, the Neckbeard take cares of it, you know? It's like reduce, reuse, recycle. This guy's taking care of the planet. He's feeding himself for a week, you know? It's kinda smart if you really think about it. Alright, the story's called Smelly Beard, so brace yourself. You should know what to expect, but it's pretty bad. I've been lurking on this sub for a while and thought I'd share my story about a former roommate of mine who I think fits the stereotypical neckbeard archetype to the T. For reference, I was a 19-year-old Asian male with B, a 32-year-old white male, as a roommate. B was a really big guy all around. He was 5'11", probably 300 pounds, or at least close to that, had a long unkempt beard and equally long greasy hair. I actually, upon initially reading this story, I missed the 32-year-old part and was scared that this story was written about me, because sophomore year of college, I had a 19-year-old Asian roommate, and I was like 6 foot, 300 pounds. Not that unkempt, but I did have a little bit of fear that this was Calvin. I love you, Calvin, I miss you. I saw him around campus all the time prior to that, but we never really crossed paths until that semester. On my first day upon moving into my new dorm, I was hit with a stench that I would describe as a cross between a hamper full of dirty, sweaty football uniforms, garlic-infused farts, and garbage. B wasn't even in the room at the time, but I smelled him long before I actually had to sit down with him. When we finally did meet, he seemed like a fairly decent enough guy, albeit a bit awkward, and told me his entire life story, why he, a 32-year-old, was back in college. He also overshared a lot of stuff about his personal life, like his intimate history and other weird, unnecessary details. In passing, he mentioned that he had sleep apnea, almost certainly as a consequence of his extreme obesity. But I never really thought of it much until that night, where it was practically impossible to sleep as he snored like an actual chainsaw. But it got worse. He didn't shower that night, despite the fact that we both lived in Hawaii, probably one of the most humid states in the Union, and he didn't even change his clothes. When I pointed that out, he shrugged it off and said, "That's just what I do." Aside from his disgusting tendencies, he also had no sense of common courtesy. He always had his monitor dialed up to the highest brightness setting, even when I was clearly trying to sleep, and would sometimes fall asleep at his computer like that. Waking him up was a near impossible feat, though part of me does suspect he was just ignoring me. B's most revolting habit, though, was by far his tendency to sometimes sleep nearly completely naked. The image of his horrifically obese, hairy, blob-like body in the buff is something that I'll never be able to unsee. Goddamn, that hit home, man. I have a horrifically obese, hairy, blob-like body. Anyway, I tried on multiple occasions to ask him to not do the gross, disgusting, and inconsiderate shit he always did in the nicest way possible, but my protests always fell on deaf ears. In the end, all I could do was beg my RA to allow me to switch rooms before I killed him. I don't know what he's been up to since then, but to date, I've never met a more thoroughly repulsive person in my life. I pity anyone unfortunate enough to have to share a space with him. And I don't know if this is just like a rule that I have made up in my head, but I thought that they didn't allow like much older students to dorm in college. Because I don't think there's anything wrong with a 32-year-old going back to college. Like, that's awesome if you do that, but I didn't think they were like allowed to be in the dorms with all these young kids. But yeah, this guy sounds like an absolute nightmare, despite not really seeming to have a bunch of personal problems. This level of lack of hygiene and just being generally inconsiderate is enough to just make you really bad. Like, even though it's just smells, like, it all adds up and it is extremely bothersome. I wanted to include this one just to dispel any fears people might have about possibly being a neckbeard. I am terrified that I may be a neckbeard. Does anyone else feel this way? I am single. I am into certain nerdy things, mainly gaming and D&D. I have a friend who is a huge neckbeard. I have no neckbeard, but I do have long hair that I usually wear in a bun. I am not obese, and I have good hygiene habits, and I go to the gym regularly. I do not watch anime, flex. But as the saying goes, it's the neckbeard on the inside that counts. Because of this, I am terrified that I may be a neckbeard as well, and I constantly compare myself to the neckbeards in these stories to see if I am like them. I get the sneaking suspicion that this post is just some upvote bait or just wanting to feel good about not being a neckbeard, because it just doesn't make sense that this person acknowledges that they do not have any hygiene issues. They say it's the neckbeard on the inside that counts, and yet they say they've read a bunch of these stories so they would know what the neckbeard actions are, you know, like thinking that you're better and smarter than everybody, you know, maybe fetishizing Asian women, thinking that girls owe you something because you're so smart and nice and knowledgeable about anime or whatever. So if you're reading all these stories and the actions of the neckbeards line up with what you do, and that's why you're afraid that you're a neckbeard, then yeah, you might actually be a neckbeard. But if those aren't the case, then why did you even post this? You know that you're not. On top, I've got the latest neckbeard nests video. On the bottom, I've got me reviewing some 15-second horror movies that are painfully good and painfully bad. It's a good time video. Make sure you vote today, even though it's probably already too late for that. I hope everybody's doing super well. Oh yeah, channel members, love you guys. I hope everybody's doing super well, skating on to the best of your abilities and drinking a sufficient amount of water. I'll see you super soon. Peace out, Cub Scouts.